Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dragon Ball. Now today I'm doing a discussion on Dragon Ball GT, almost a review and analysis of the series, kind of discussing, is this a bad series, is this series crap, like a lot of people say, is it a good sequel to the Dragon Ball Z series, or is it at least a good anime on its own, or at least a halfway decent one? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, kind of getting into this, obviously GT is hated by a lot of fans, the majority of the fan base hates it and considers it non-canon. The series itself was intended to be a continuation of the Dragon Ball Z series, so it had a lot of hype and expectations to live up to, which ultimately it completely fell from. A lot of people hate the series, pan it for many reasons and many valid reasons, definitely. But Dragon Ball GT is a series that has phenomenal character designs, phenomenal fight scenes, and a lot of problems. And I'm going to discuss those. So first things first, the whole first arc is relatively boring for the most part. A lot of people don't like this arc. Even if you're not a Dragon Ball fan, there's a lot of really non-engaging, really slow points in the series, such as, the whole first planet that they visit, the desert planet that they visit, was very boring and uninteresting until the fight up with Legic. That was an interesting fight. Prior to that, we did see Goku and Oob fighting in the beginning of the series, which is a high point of the series, definitely, and that's something that I enjoyed, and I imagine many other fans did, because it's a very good fight and a very good way to start the series. But then they go, and Goku gets turned into a kid, all this stuff ensues, there's very childish moments, Goku sneaking around on this desert planet, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it just was not very entertaining for a lot of people. But I can see fans of Dragon Ball and non-fans of the series kind of liking a lot of aspects of this whole first arc because of all these interesting planetary designs that were created and all these amazing character designs that are actually throughout the series. Stuff like Baby, Omega Shenron, all the Shadow Dragons, all these characters that are very well designed. Super Saiyan 4 Goku, phenomenally designed character. I could see people really getting engaged with these character designs. That's why they've stuck around with the franchise and all these video games for so long, all these designs, because they were very well done. The problem with GT is the execution on them are very poor, and this is something a lot of fans agree with. But definitely the highest point of the whole first arc, in my opinion, would be the fight between Rildo and Goku. Very good fight in the series, even though Goku is really holding back the entire time, and the main problem with a lot of the fights in the series is that Goku's holding back in the majority of the ones earlier on in the series, and some of the ones later on in the Shadow Dragon arc. But once the Baby arc actually ensues, Baby's character in design is one of the most well-designed characters in the Dragon Ball series, in my opinion, just because of his innate ability to take over people. He can be kind of knocked off as a throwaway Hachiyak copycat in a way, because Hachiyak kind of was the tough savior, that whole recreation of a tough warrior to get back at the Saiyans, and that's kind of what Baby was as well. But he had that innate ability to take over people's bodies, which was very interesting and something we had not seen in the Dragon Ball series. So I think that's interesting for all fans and non-Dragon Ball fans alike. But once Baby takes over Goten, Gohan, Trunks, all those characters, there's some awesome fight scenes. And when he finally gets to Vegeta, that's when the series really had a turning point for me and a lot of fans. And this is kind of like a new dawn for the series, because once Goku realizes he can't stand up to Baby as a Super Saiyan 3, there's this whole thing about, Super Saiyan 4, all this stuff happens, all this new, very interesting and creative stuff that, to be quite honest, does come out of nowhere, but it's all very interesting stuff that happens, and Super Saiyan 4 is born. And this is something that changed the whole entire Dragon Ball franchise and fan base forever, is Super Saiyan 4 is a beloved character design for many fans, and this is something that a lot of people really did love. So the fight between Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Baby, objectively one of the best fights I've seen in GT. Definitely a great fight on its own. Definitely entertaining the whole way through. There's not a lot of downtime. It's pretty much all action. A lot of interesting things happen, especially when Baby turned into a great ape. That was definitely an awesome point. But then Goku goes from beating up Baby to pretty much getting demolished, and then he gets a little power up. Then beating Baby once again, and then once Baby's defeated, we move on to the Super 17 arc, which was definitely that one split in the fan base, because a lot of people really enjoyed the Super 17 arc. It's something that I myself never cared for quite as much, aside from the action scenes, but the design and the idea behind it I thought was a bit silly, with, you know, the two Android 17s fusing, the Hellfire 17 and the regular 17 fusing into one, was a bit of a silly idea, but GT's full of those. But the whole fight between Goku and 17 was definitely enjoyable, even though Goku was getting his ass beat the whole time. But it was definitely still enjoyable in its own right, but it pales in comparison to a lot of fights in the series, so it's not much to write home about. Now, my favorite part of the entire Dragon Ball GT series is the Shadow Dragon arc, definitely. I enjoyed that arc basically the whole way through. It was very enjoyable for me personally, and I know a lot of other people really enjoy a lot of those parts of the arcs, but the problem is a lot of parts of GT that are so enjoyable are so small in numbers. They're really small parts of the series, so the whole series is kind of affected very little by these. But the fight scenes in here with Haze Shenron, very comical moments. Goku's holding back against a lot of Shadow Dragons like Haze. Even Nova and Ice he holds back against, you know, when he's Super Saiyan 4, he does hold back against them as well. Oceanus, obviously, a lot of these dragons, it's not until Omega Shenron and Sin Shenron where he really meets his match and he's really struggling, and the whole thing between them is phenomenal. It really is a phenomenal fight, and honestly, the whole thing about Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta being born and then fighting and demolishing Omega Shenron has been one of my favorite scenes in the entire Dragon Ball franchise, to be quite honest. And Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta as a character is definitely a fan favorite and one of the most beloved characters, at least in terms of the Dragon Ball GT, obviously, and arguably the entire franchise. And I definitely really like the ending to GT, except for the whole 100-year gap. I didn't really care for that. I never have. I thought it was a bit unnecessary, but Goku leaving with Shenron, it really is a touching moment, definitely. And it's one of the most touching moments in the entire Dragon Ball franchise, and very, very well done. So those are my overall thoughts. Kind of a brief overview of Dragon Ball GT as a series. Very brief, not too in-depth, but I kind of wanted to just go through that stuff so I can kind of get to the meat of what I want to talk about, and that is kind of, is this a good series on its own if you kind of separate it from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z? Because compared to Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, it's pretty mediocre. Definitely, a lot of people hate it, and for good reason, especially if you're comparing it to those series. It's crap in a lot of ways, but I think that as an anime itself, it can be considered good or maybe above average, and the reason I say this is because the fight scenes and the character designs and a lot of the dynamics of the battles really carry the series, and that's pretty much the main reason why it is so enjoyable for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people really liked a lot of the dialogue because the series is very poorly written and thought out. There's many plot holes. Not only plot holes that affect the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z series, but plot holes within the own GT series itself. There are plot holes that the series itself create, and that can be something that if you're not a fan of the series, you're going to notice watching GT solely. You're going to notice plot holes that the series itself created for the GT series, if that makes sense. So, very poorly written series. Honestly, I think it's just above average for a regular anime. For Dragon Ball, it's pretty mediocre. You know, one thing I do think really holds this series back, and this isn't going to affect the casual anime fan. I think the hardcore anime fans really would nitpick this series, obviously. One of the main things that really holds this series back, aside from the plot holes and stuff like that, is there literally is no character development. It's all about Goku later on in the series, and there's no character development from any of the characters. Even Pan and Oob, there's really no progression in their characters other than maybe a few power-ups. There's no real character development, and this is something that we see. We see development of characters in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and maybe just because the series has been going on for so long, they couldn't fit any development in. But it's definitely worth mentioning there is really no development of character aside from, you know, maybe like some of the villains like Baby and Super 17. That's really it. Thing is, I enjoy the series. I do enjoy the series. I'm not sure what it is about. I know I like the fight scenes a lot, and I like a lot of character designs, but there's something about GT. I mean, I love the Japanese soundtrack as well. The American soundtrack's crap in my opinion for it, but the Japanese soundtrack for it is beautiful. Definitely beautifully composed, but a lot of the fight scenes, a lot of the things in the character designs is something I love. I love Super Saiyan 4 as a design, but I want to know what you guys think of Dragon Ball GT. Do you think it's a good anime by itself? Do you think it's a good anime at all? Do you think it's absolute crap? What would you guys give it if you had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? If I had to objectively scale this series, I would probably give it about a 6.5, slightly above average, all things considered. You know, considering fans of the series and non-fans, I think it's a mediocre series overall. I think there's definitely a lot of enjoyable parts, but there's so many weak aspects of the series that they're really hard to discount, really. But there's a lot of high points, and the great thing is, when you have a DVD set form, you can go back and watch those good parts, and they are quite enjoyable in my opinion, especially the baby arcs and the Shadow Dragon stuff. I really do love rewatching that. But what's your guys' favorite parts of GT? What do you hate? What do you like about it? Let me know. What do you guys think it is? What do you think it's a good series? What do you give it out of 10? I want to hear what you guys think of this, because I think we can all collectively discuss this in the comments. But these are my thoughts, opinions, and brief analysis of Dragon Ball GT. But I don't think the show sucks. I can definitely, absolutely see why you would think it sucks. And just for those of you who are wondering, I definitely think that the more recent iterations of Dragon Ball, like Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods and Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F, are definitely better and more enjoyable than Dragon Ball GT. Dragon Ball Super is still an ongoing series, so I can't comment on that. But Resurrection F and Battle of Gods I definitely enjoy more than GT. Even though I like Super Saiyan 4 more than God, those movies are just superior in design, writing, and obviously overall quality. But that's been my video for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, partake in the comment section on your thoughts on GT. But other than that, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you later.